you look for the big picture when it comes to experiences that you have? Do you find messages and clarity in those experiences? And do you learn from them? Well, last week I had one of those experiences, and the message hit me loud and clear. Hi, my name's Karen, and I'm the host of Thriving Talk, and welcome to my brand new series, my Virtue series with Thriving Talk. Um, I see some people are watching already. That's wonderful. If you are here, come and say hi in the comments. That would be great. So today we are talking about humility. Humility is one of those virtues that are really good to develop. So let's just back up a second and talk about virtues a little bit in general. So virtues begin in the heart and in the mind. They need to be nurtured, and it's the accumulation of thousands of small decisions and actions. Did you know that the Latin root word is virtus, which means strength? So my goal here is with this series to discuss various virtuous attributes that can help us become strong so that we can thrive spiritually, mentally, and physically. So today we are talking about humility. So let's go back to the experience I mentioned in the beginning. You know, the one that had that message that came loud and clear to me. Now, if you have had a strong message come to you through an experience that you've had, feel free to let me know in the comments. So, hi Joshua, hi Noah, hi Cindy. Great to see people on here with me. So please feel free to comment and share your thoughts as we go through this discussion of what it is to be humble and how we can develop that attribute. Okay, so if you've had any experiences where you have felt a strong message come to you through that experience, feel free to let us know in the comments, as I'm sure we would all be happy to hear what you have learned from your experiences. So don't mind me, I have just a few little notes here just to lead me on my way. So I actually wanted to share a quote that a friend sent me earlier today. It was really nice to get this. She texted this to me. It's from Thomas More. I'm not sure who that is, but the quote is, "Humility, that low, sweet root from which all heavenly virtues shoot." So that's a great quote. Thank you very much for sending that to me. And absolutely a great attribute to start with today to lead in this series. So let me go back to the story that made a big impact on me. So this happened earlier this month. I took my kids out to see my brother and his family. So we hadn't seen them for at least a year and a half since before the lockdowns. They have two kids that are almost 3 and almost 5. And we went to their favorite lake. And we played in the water in the sun, and it was wonderful. I had life jackets for my younger two kids in case they wanted to venture out into the deeper water. And my niece and nephew had floaty vests, and they loved the water. They'd go out to these platforms, these floating platforms, and they would jump off the platforms into the water. They just loved it. So you might think you know where this story is going. If you think so, let me know in the comments. But I'll continue with the story. So we had bought an inflatable dinosaur, kind of Loch Ness monster-y type of big inflatable. And it was a hit with the kids, especially my nephew Atticus. He loved it. So he would go out to one of these platforms, these floating platforms, and one of my kids would have him sit on the floaty and then slide the floaty off the platform into the water. He loved it. It was fun. It was great. Well, eventually, I went out there and I was by the platform, and one of my sons lowered Addie into the water. And as he got into the water, I, being a mom and an auntie, wanting to pull him close to me, tried to reach for him. And the floaty moved. And Joshua was watching and he says, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's right. And I had to leave the dock because I was hanging onto it, and I swam a little bit to it, and I tried to reach for it again, and it kept moving. And so it's really hard to grab a floaty like that in deep water. It just, you just can't do it. So I thought, well, if I get my hand underneath and there's a little groove underneath, I thought, well, maybe I can pull it. But it didn't work. And then all of a sudden, like, it didn't seem like there was a wind at all, but it just took sail like a sailboat. I'm not even kidding. And I'm just like, oh boy, like I need to like swim after Atticus. And I was swimming and swimming, and I just could not get it. Every time I got close, it just went further and faster away. It didn't take very long for me to start to be a little concerned. Now, if you know me from my childhood, I love to swim. I was a strong swimmer. I wanted to be a lifeguard someday. I love swimming. But this was getting away from me. So I called to my son, one of my older sons, who was still by one of the floating platforms, and I called for help, and he didn't hear me. And I swam a little bit more, and I'm like, I am having trouble. I like physically, I can't touch the water or the ground there. I can't get Atticus. Atticus is totally happy, content, sitting on this, and he is doing great. But I am concerned and I am struggling. So I call to my son, Chris, and he hears me this time and he starts swimming. He has a long ways just to get to where I am and then to try to get where Addie is. And luckily, Atticus was going parallel to the beach, but it was still in deep water, too deep that I couldn't touch. And I had to float on my back to just breathe. I was having trouble breathing. I was just having trouble swimming. I was weak. I was exhausted. And I was nervous about Atticus. But I knew at that moment I had fell short. I couldn't do this on my own. And it was a huge wake-up call. My body isn't as strong, my health isn't as good, and it hit me so hard. So thankfully, Addie was fine. For him, he'd probably love to do that trip again. But it was a wake-up moment for me. So even though my health might weaken, my body will age, but Christ, he is the same today, tomorrow, and forever. So this was a message and a reminder for me to be humble in all things, that I can't do everything. We feel one day that we have everything together. And then the next day, it could even be the next moment, we fail. Everything changes. Things are upside down. We cannot do it on our own. And in those moments, we are brought to our knees. We are made humble. So humility is gratefully recognizing our dependence on a higher power, which is the Lord. We have a constant need for him, and that's okay. That's actually what he wants. He wants us to let him on our team. It's not weakness. Rather, an indication of knowing where our true strength lies. So the Lord will strengthen us as we humble ourselves. So I want to share a verse from the Bible, the King James Version. In James chapter 4, verse 6 and 10, it says, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. So I wanted to share a picture with you. So when we have our experiences in life, how are we seeing these experiences? Are we looking through a small lens, or are we able to step back and see the big picture? And we might not see the whole picture, but we might be able to see it bigger, and we might be able to learn from it. So this experience that I had at the lake with my family and extended family, I learned a lesson from it, a lesson that I feel was timely for me. So I want to just go back to the story a little bit. So the next day we went back to the lake, and it was actually a windy day. The wind had actually changed direction completely. Some kids were losing or struggling to hang on to their floaties in the water. But it dawned on me that the direction that Addie would have gone if it was day 2 instead of day 1 was the complete opposite. He would no longer be going parallel to the beach. He would be going the other way across the lake, far away. When he got to the shore on the other side, it would be very far, and it could be really hard to get to him, and he could get lost. And if I were in the water and I'm struggling and I'm in the middle of the lake now, that could be very dangerous for me. So I felt, I guess, a tender mercy at that moment. Maybe that's the right word, where I felt grateful that I learned what I felt was my lesson the day before, when it was more manageable, versus having to learn to be humble the hard way in a more dangerous scenario. So day 2 was just as valuable for me because I realized that God was looking out for me and for Atticus, and that things could have been worse, and thankfully they weren't. So can you tell me what experiences you've had where maybe you saw the bigger picture, that you were listening, and that you had, for a moment, a glimpse of a message from God to you? So I just wanted to share some comments here. So Backyard City Homestead with Cindy said, Thomas More was a 19th century Irish philosopher and poet. He wrote the hymn, Come Ye Disconsolate. All right. Thank you for that background, Cindy. Appreciate that. She also said, what a great image. Perfect illustration for what you're saying about seeing the bigger picture. Thank you. Yes, I was trying to find the perfect picture, and I thought this one would definitely work for that. Okay, so I just wanted to go on a little bit and talk about the qualities of humility. All right, so as I mentioned, this experience, it solidified to me the message that I needed to be humble. So I'm just grateful that I saw the big picture before having to learn the hard way. But if we want to be humble, so now I feel like, okay, I need to be reminded to be humble. What qualities should I be striving for? And so, okay. So feel free to share your thoughts here of what qualities you feel can help you become more humble. But if we are submissive, we submit our will to God's will, then we are being humble. So when we do that, it's actually the only uniquely personal thing that we have to give God. So this might not be easy to do, but this is what's required. We also need to be meek. So that means not easily provoked, and to be able to acknowledge accomplishments in others. We need to be teachable like a child. In the Bible, Matthew chapter 18, verse 4, it talks about that. We also need to have an absence of pride, arrogance, and vanity. And we need to recognize all of our talents and gifts come from God. So contrary to what we might often think, greatness doesn't come only because of strength and power. True greatness requires humility. So humility is one of the dominant principles that the Lord taught in the Beatitudes. If you have heard of the Beatitudes in the Bible, in the scriptures, let me know in the comments that you're familiar with it. So they talk about a lot of different attributes that Christ wants us to have a happy, thriving, successful life and life after this life. So when his disciples asked him during this time of the Beatitudes, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Jesus called a little child to him and chided them, saying, whosoever shall humble himself as this little child, the same is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Now you can find that in Matthew chapter 18. So being humble helps us to be strong. Okay, so how do we become more humble? So if you have ideas in that, like, I would love to hear from you too. So this is the information that I find, the information that resonates with me, but you might have some information that and thoughts and perspective that might benefit others as well. So how can we become more humble? Choose to become humble. If we don't choose to be humble, we will be compelled or forced to be made humble, and we don't want that. Just like with the difference between day 1 and day 2 of my experience at the lake. Day 1, I had this experience. We were managing it, but it was hard. It was more than what I could manage. We got through it. Addie was safe. I was safe. Chris was safe. Everyone was safe. And I learned a lesson. If I didn't learn that lesson and we had day 2 come and I had to learn the lesson the hard way, it would have been a lot more stressful. So don't make it so you have to be compelled and forced to be humble. Choose for yourself to be humble. So Cindy from Backyard City Homestead said, as you illustrated in your story, acknowledging our limitations is very humbling. Yeah. So it actually hit me pretty hard to realize I was getting older. My body is weak. I'm actually really struggling with weakness right now with my health. And realizing I can't do everything. And even what I used to be able to do. I know that I'm not perfect by any means, but I need God's help in things that I do, for sure. So choose to be humble, so that you are not compelled and forced to be humble. And then develop and understand your relationship with God. And then recognize that all that we do and all that we are is because of God. So those are what I had for how to become humble. If you have other suggestions, ideas, or references, feel free to share that with me in the comments. If you aren't watching live, feel free to comment in the replay later on. So it's so important that we always try to progress personally and to share what we know to help others thrive. This is why I'm doing this whole series. This is my first episode of this series on Thriving Talk. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube. I hope that you're finding value in it. I have felt compelled to do this for 2, maybe 3 years, and I've been nervous and polishing the ideas in my mind and trying to get my feet wet in different series and different things before I come here and share things that are near and dear to my heart with people on the internet, family, friends, and friends that I hope to make in the future. But I just wanted to thank you for joining me. If you have enjoyed this episode discussing humility in my virtue series, please let me know by liking this video, by sharing your comments, by subscribing to either my YouTube channel, Thriving Talk, or my Facebook page, Thriving Talk with Karen. And also share this with others. So if you think that the world can benefit by focusing on attributes like these, please share this with people. I feel this time in the world that perhaps we need to focus on these things a little bit more. At least I do. So I hope that you are finding this valuable. And next time on my virtue series, we're going to be discussing gratitude. So gratitude and why it's an attribute worth developing. So I will see you then, and I'll see you then. So I'll be Sunday afternoons on Thriving Talk. I will try to have them all pre-scheduled so you can click the reminder button and be notified every time I go live. So until then, everyone, keep thriving. Talk to you later. Bye.